We all remember the day, Mr. Biden. How could we forget? You had a big fat smile on your face. It was the day Obama signed Obamacare into law. When you whispered in President Obama's ear, yet loud enough for the press microphones to hear, "This is a big frigging deal." You didn't use exactly that word, but we all got the point. You had a thrill go up your leg as Obamacare became law. It was a disaster. A frigging bad deal for the American people. Today something happened that really was a big deal. Keep watching. I know you like to blame Trump for everything. Blame him for this.
All right, Fox News Alert, a live look at the White House as you see the president and the first lady set to greet Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, the prime minister, and his wife arriving at the White House as an historic peace deal is set to be formally recognized there at the White House. Bilateral meetings going on this morning with the UAE and Bahrain, and then a signing ceremony set to take place
at Bahrain and of the United Arab Emirates are already inside. They'll be signing this deal, and of course it is going to be open to the media, so we will see that. But the fascinating thing about this is this opens the door for other Arab countries, Arab Gulf countries, to sign accords, to sign agreements, to normalize relations with Israel, and that puts more pressure on Iran. And as KT was pointing out, Iran is Persian, not an Arab nation. It is a Persian Shia Islam nation, and so that puts more pressure on Iran. And then Lebanon, pressure now to push Hezbollah out. The entire region changes with this signing today, and it really opens the door for more trade, for more normalized relations, and for more peace throughout the entire
All eyes on the White House. President Trump is set to preside over a historic ceremony this hour at the White House. It could mark a new era for Middle East peace efforts. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and leaders from the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are set to sign off on deals normalizing relations. The UAE and Bahrain becoming just the third and fourth Arab nations to normalize relations with Israel. This is a very big day. The president, who helped broker both agreements, expects others to follow suit.
We made a deal with UAE, then Bahrain came in, and we have many others going to be coming in over a short period of time. And the Palestinians will ultimately come in too. And you're going to have peace in the Middle East.
And I want to first go to Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts. He is there on the lawn. John, what is the very latest?
Harris, good afternoon to you from the South Lawn of the White House, where hundreds of people are assembled for the signing of what are known as the Abraham Accords. President Trump is just right now in the Oval Office with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I can see the assembled pools of the United States and Israel waiting to go in for the pool spray, and we'll probably get some comments from both of them. Here's how it's going to unfold. On the south portico balcony behind me, right up behind the presidential seal, there is a podium. President Trump will come up and he will speak first. Then Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will speak, and then it will be the foreign minister from the United Arab Emirates, who happens to be the brother, by the way, of the de facto leader of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, and then the foreign minister of Bahrain will speak, and then all four will come down and they will sign the Abraham Accords. This really is another watershed moment in the history of the Middle East. This idea of the normalization of relations is a very important one, and is part of a strategy that the president has of surrounding the Palestinians with either peace or normalization agreements to kind of force them to the table. And we're seeing the reaction to that in the Gaza and in the West Bank, where Hamas and Fatah are now coming together in opposition to these agreements with the UAE and with Bahrain to say we have to present a united front against what's happening in the Arab world here. But the president is banking that eventually the Palestinians will see the writing on the wall and say, look, everybody else is signing these deals. We have to finally come to the table as well. Now, as much as this is a normalization of relations in terms of diplomatic and trade, it's also got a military component to it. The United Arab Emirates really wants United States-built F-35 fighters. And this morning on Fox and Friends, President Trump said he would be happy to sell them to them. Listen to what he said.
I know the leader very well, Mohammed. I would have no problem in selling them the F-35. I would have absolutely no problem. I view it as an asset, not a liability. Plus, it's tremendous jobs at home. You're talking about a large number of planes, reasonably large number of planes, not the biggest.
Now, while the F-35 comes in various configurations, it is the most advanced fighter on the planet, and the thought of the United Arab Emirates having F-35s is something that gives Israel a little bit of heartburn. So it's likely that in the conversation that's going on right now in the Oval Office between the president and Benjamin Netanyahu, that may be a slight point of contention. But overall, Harris, what we're going to see is history unfold today for just the fourth time since the creation of Israel, the normalization of relations between Israel and two of its Arab neighbors. Quite a day.
I want to bring back now the virtual couch and also welcome in a special guest, the former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Dan Gillerman, live tonight from Tel Aviv. Ambassador, I'm going to come to you first with the question of the day, I feel. How does this change not just relationships and friendships, but also the economics? And you heard our correspondent John Roberts talking there, and also the military expectations in the region.
Well, this is a real watershed moment. And as you all know, we're all anxiously awaiting a vaccine against COVID-19. I hope it will be available soon, but what we're witnessing today is actually a vaccine against war in the Middle East. It is indeed a very significant move, which I believe will prevent any further wars, because what we're witnessing today is significant representatives of the moderate Arab and Muslim world who have finally realized that Israel is not their enemy, that the real threat to them does not emanate from Jerusalem, but rather from Tehran. And therefore, they have made a very wise choice to ally with Israel in order to together not only face the threat from the extremists in Tehran, but to make the most of the incredible capabilities which we all have in this region. And this will lead to tremendous economic cooperation, to innovation, to creativity. It will help all the countries involved, both Bahrain and the Emirates, and I hope others will follow, especially the Saudis and maybe others. And we will actually witness a new reality in the Middle East. It is a very, very important day, and it is also changing the paradigm, because until recently, the Arab world said, we will not make peace with Israel, we will not normalize relations until you solve the Israeli-Palestinian problem. But the Palestinians have unfortunately yet again proved that they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. They could have accepted the president's peace plan, and they could have embarked on peace with Israel. Instead, they keep saying no. And at the end of the day, they are Arab neighbors who want to live in peace and make the most of the great resources we all have decided to make peace with Israel, normalize relations. I think it is significant economically, it is significant militarily. I'm not that happy about the F-35s being available to the Emirates, not because I'm afraid that the Emirates will ever use them against Israel, but mainly because of the proximity of the Emirates to the Iranians and the threat of that technology maybe finding its way into Iranian hands. But I'm sure that the president and this administration, as the US always has, will make sure that Israel maintains its qualitative edge militarily, because we do live in a very fragile and unpredictable region. But this is a great day, and as I said, hopefully a vaccine against war.
Amen.
Ambassador, this is Melissa Francis, and if I could ask you about the approach. I mean, the president has taken a completely different, very patient and very deliberate approach. He started out moving the embassy. His next step made sure and emphasized to the world that the U.S. is energy independent, therefore shifting, that dependence on the region. Then he started to make deals with the players around the perimeter, rather than, as you pointed out, rather than starting with the Palestinians or even the Iranians. I mean, instead saying, look, we're going to make all of these other deals around the region in order to maybe isolate the Palestinians and by extension, the Iranians, and have everybody else sort of benefiting from the ties, from the economic ties, from the normalization. Do you think that this approach in the long term will be more effective? Because others obviously have had what looked like very significant peace deals that didn't hold together. Do you think this has more staying power, sir?
Yes, I do believe that this is here to stay. And I do believe that this is a very wise and very original but thoughtful new strategy by the president. As you said, time and time again, for years, U.S. administrations and Israeli administrations have tried to bring the Israelis and Palestinians together. We were very near to agreements with the Palestinians, who at the very last minute walked away from them. And I think the president realized that the Middle East, as the whole world, is changing. People don't want wars and conflicts anymore. People want to live in peace, to make the most of their resources, to give their people a better life. And the moderate Arab and Muslim states have also realized that the real fight for supremacy in their region is between two countries who are not even Arab, and that's Turkey and Iran. And they have decided to take fate into their own hands and to agree to the president's strategy, which says we will now recognize Israel, we will normalize relations with Israel, we will enter into economic cooperation and other cooperations with Israel. And at the end of the day, what they're really saying to the Palestinians is enough. You've had your chance. We've always tried to protect you and to look after your interests, but saying no time and time again is not the answer. The real answer for the Palestinians should have been yes, but. And maybe then that we could have embarked on some kind of understanding. Now that the other Arab and Muslim states, and especially the Emirates and Bahrain, and I hope others, and including Saudi Arabia, will follow, have created a situation where the Palestinians understand that they've been left behind, that the real interest of their brethren is to live in peace and normalcy and achieve the aims and improve the quality of life and standard of living of their people. And if the Palestinians don't hurry up and join this train, which has already left the station, but maybe there'll be a station on the way where they can jump on it, they would be making a huge mistake, because they'll be left alone, and all they'll have at their disposal is the horrible terror gangs of Hamas and Hezbollah, who at the end of the day are making the lives of Palestinians worse. And if the Palestinians really care about their people, they should join those other enlightened, modern Arab states and say, okay, let's do it together. And I'm sure that if they do, this indeed will be the end result of what I do believe is a very, very successful strategy by the president, by the administration, by Jared Kushner, who I understand played a major role in it. And I salute all of them for that effort. It didn't look as if it had a great chance at the beginning, but today on the South Lawn of the White House, we're truly witnessing history, and we are witnessing a new chapter and indeed a new Middle East.
Charlie, as I come to you first, there are a couple things that you really can't miss. And when you look at the moment, and we heard John Roberts talk about, Egypt in 1978 and Jordan in 1994. These are the third and fourth Arab states now to normalize relations with Israel. So the list is short. These moments are always big. But I've heard you point out that we aren't seeing as much coverage of this as we should. Is that still the case? And why do you feel that that's significant to say today?
Well, I think that any discussion about the coverage that we see of anything that goes on these days has to sort of center around President Trump. And I think a lot of people in the media are loath to give him credit for anything. The New York Times tried to sort of dismiss this development today as some sort of a gift from Bibi Netanyahu to President Trump in an election year, as if Bibi Netanyahu hasn't fought for peace for his country for his entire political career. But it's just that stinginess that we see. But, President Trump's critics are always going into hysterics about how he does things differently. They don't like who he talks to. They don't like how he talks. But this right here, this is the fruit of somebody doing something differently. As you, Melissa, pointed out earlier, he's willing to reinvent the wheel here. And this is the fruit of that. Two other points that I think are important. One is in reinventing the wheel, the first thing he did was stop kowtowing and getting into bed with Iran, stop giving them billions of dollars on pallets of cash. Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. It's probably not a good idea to give them more money and to try to befriend them to seek peace. That's not going to work. And then the second important point is that, this kind of success begets success. When you develop a real economy in the Middle East that Israel is sort of a linchpin in, that opens up an opportunity for others to come out into the light of peace. And if that happens and the media can be fair about it, President Trump will go down in history as one of the great masterminds of peace in the world, again, if he gets credit for it.
Thank you, sir, for your leadership. And if it wasn't for that, it would have been far more difficult for all of us to achieve.
No, I understand that well. It was something we felt very strongly about. And being friends with you, your brother, your family, you made it happen, and we appreciate it. And I think your country appreciates it, and the world appreciates it. So thank you very much. It's really great. Any questions, please?
What message would you like the Palestinians to take from today's event, sir?
Well, I think they see what's happening, and a lot of countries are joining up. And as you know, we don't make payments to them. We're paying a lot of money to the Palestinians every year, and we were not being treated properly. They were not saying nice things for many years. And nobody's ever done this before, but I stopped payment. It's a term that's used for a lot of things. It's called we stop payment. Because if they're not going to respect us or if they're not going to speak well of us, we're not going to be involved. They, I think, are seeing what's happening, and we've been given very strong signals that they'd like to be a part of what's happening. So I think we'll see the Palestinians at some point, but before we see the Palestinians, we'll see other very important countries come into this transaction. They'd be here today, frankly, if we wanted them. So I think that you'll see some very great things happening in the Middle East. You're going to have peace without blood in the sand. For years you had blood in the sand. That's all you had, blood in the sand. You got nothing for it. They got nothing for it. Now you're going to have peace, and it'll be a real peace. And you have the most powerful countries, as an example. This is a great warring nation, if it wants to be, with a tremendous military, a powerful military, and they're really great warriors. And it was very important that we had you, and we've had great talks, as you know, with Saudi Arabia, with the king. And I think he's going to be terrific. I think he's got a very open mind. But I've had very personal talks with the king and the crown prince, and I think their mind is very open. They're very much, I think they're going to come along really well. So it's an honor to be here. We're going to have a ceremony outside. And I just want to say that being the first, because you were the first, being the first was very important that you be the first for us. Because you're leading a path, you're leading a way, and it's something that people were very surprised at. I will say that even the biggest optimists were shocked when they heard about this transaction, and shocked in a very positive way. So I want to thank you for making it all happen. Thank you very much. And we'll see what happens with Iran. I would say right after the election, within a period of a week, maybe a month, but within a period of a very short period, within maybe literally a very short time, you'll have Iran coming back and saying, let's get this whole thing worked out. Iran is suffering. Iran, unfortunately, I don't want them to suffer, but their economy is tanked. They have a minus 27 GDP. Nobody's ever heard of a number like that. I think it's perhaps a record setter, but they're down 27%. And I think they want to make a deal, but they'd much rather deal with sleepy Joe Biden than me because, we're going to make a deal, and I'll make a very fair deal. And I even suggested wait till after the election. Make yourself feel good. Wait till after the election. So we'll see what happens with Iran. I think Iran will end up being a part of a very large and very, very difficult part of the world. Look, the Middle East has been a very complex, very difficult part of the world. We're making it easier. We're making it a lot simpler. But I think right after our election, the American election, if we win, we'll have a deal with Iran.
And right now, the Prime Minister of Israel, who just met with the president as well in a bilateral, we get to see first reactions as this is coming together. And we are just a short time away from the signing ceremony. Let's watch as Benjamin Netanyahu and the President of the United States talk peace.
That's nice, isn't it, though?
Yep. This one, I want to show you. Can I show this?
Sure. I would love that. This was a special token of affection given by myself and the First Lady to Prime Minister and the First Lady of Israel. And it's a key. We call it a key to the White House, and it's a key to our country and to our hearts. And you've been an amazing leader for a long period of time, and this is, in many respects, the big day, because this is something that's very special. And we just left UAE and Bahrain. We're going to meet outside in a ceremony, and it's just a very important event, and it's an honor to have you with us, baby. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have said, and this is true, that you have the key to the hearts of the people of Israel because of all the great things you've done for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic.
The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, will sign a treaty of peace, diplomatic relations, and full normalization. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Declaration of Peace. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Abraham Accords. They will each sign 4 copies, 1 in English, 1 in Hebrew, and 2 in Arabic.
That all took place at the Lee dining room table from the Blair House. There's significance to what they signed on. President Truman held weekly luncheon meetings with his cabinet at the dining room at that same table, talking about helping to chart the progress for American diplomacy. And today, President Trump, with that Lee dining room table from the Blair House, pulled onto the South Portico beneath the balcony to sign this landmark accord, bringing aboard 2 more Arab states to normalize relations and make peace with Israel. It was important to hear from each of those leaders. Bahrain's foreign minister said today's agreement is an important first step, and it is incumbent upon us, Arab states, to urgently work to build enduring peace. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said, "Those who share the wounds of war cherish the blessings of peace," as they look forward to what comes next.